Hi guys, this is my first Booktube video. It was inspired by Bookish Thoughts, who tagged anyone who wanted to start a YouTube channel. I wanted to break into this community. I've wanted to get into it since about Christmas, so this is me getting around to it in late April. So for my first video, I guess I'm going to answer questions from the New York Times by the book tag. Let's just get into it. So the first question is, what book is on your nightstand now? I've got two books on my nightstand now, and they are an interesting collection. I've got the fourth Game of Thrones Song of Ice and Fire book. I've got A Feast for Crows by George R.R. Martin, and the second book I have is Wuthering by Emily Brontë. Both really enjoying them, not very far into them, so we'll see which one I finish first. The second question is, what was the last truly great book you read? And I would have to say The Glass Castle by Jeanette. It's a memoir depicting the story of the author growing up with her three siblings and her incredibly dysfunctional parents. The story starts off with a grown-up Jeanette going on her way to a fancy dress party. She looks outside of the cab and she sees her mother rooting through a dumpster, like an everyday homeless person in New York City. And she hides because she's ashamed. And then the story flashes back to one of Jeanette's earliest memories, and it kind of follows her as she grows up with these incredibly dysfunctional parents. It's got some heart-wrenching moments, but it's also got so many nice moments where the siblings come together and be there for each other, which kind of evens out the sad moments in this book. It's just beautifully written. I loved reading every page, and I would strongly recommend it to anyone who really enjoyed White Oleander by Jeanette. If you could meet any author, dead or alive, who would you choose? I chose William Shakespeare right now because we've got Shakespeare 400 going on. I'm a huge early modern British history fan, and I would love some insight into the period. The next question is, what books might we be surprised for you to have on your shelf? This could be difficult because this is my first Booktube video, but I decided to go with my OULIPO Compendium. These were a group of writers, or there still are a group of writers from France who write poems and novels and short stories to certain literary constraints. So an example would be one author wrote an entire novel without the letter E. So if you're into poetry or word games or creative writing, I highly recommend you guys look these guys up on the internet, because there's so much stuff out there and so many fun, like, little quirky things to read about. The next question is, how do you organize your personal library? I kind of start at either edge of a shelf and move inwards. So right now I have a literary fiction and memoir section that I really like. I have a to be read corner. I have two Jane Austen sections. I have a Brontë section. I have one corner which has Game of Thrones, The Hunger Games, and The Book Thief in it. So I guess I'll call that my excessive death section. That's really how I organize my personal library. The next question is, what book have you always wanted to read but never got around to, or anything you feel embarrassed to have never read? There's one book that came out, and as a linguistics major, I'm really interested in reading. It's The Art of Language Invention by David J. Peterson. He talks about how he's created the languages for Game of Thrones, and as a linguist, I just want to see what kind of information I can glean away from that book. Any books I've been embarrassed that I haven't read? The complete Harry Potter series. I started it when I was in grade 3 and gave up in book 5 when a kid in my class ruined the ending for me. I don't think I was very invested in the series. I may have been too young, but I may give it another shot one day. The next question is, disappointing or overrated books. What book did you feel you were supposed to like and didn't? Or remember the last book that you put down. The last book that I thought I was supposed to like but didn't like was, I may get a lot of heat for this, but 1984 by George Orwell. I just could not get into it. The last book that I put down, I can't really remember which one. It was either In Cold Blood by Truman Capote or Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. This, I didn't really feel inclined to finish it. The next question is, what kind of books are you drawn to? Anything you stay clear of? I'm drawn to classics. I'm drawn to classics normally written by women. I'm drawn to historical fiction, regular fiction, memoirs. I'll pretty much give anything that's written in the first person a shot. I feel like I can relate to the character a lot more. I tend to stay clear of mysteries and science fiction and young adult, but that doesn't mean I won't take any suggestions in those genres. It just means that I am not inclined to go out and find books from those genres myself. Second to last question is, if you could require the president, striking that out and putting prime minister, to read one book, what would it be? This was definitely the toughest question for me. I stared at my bookshelf for about 10 minutes, came up with Behind the Beautiful Forevers by Katherine. This was on the Nerdfighter book club a few years ago. It features the story of several people who live in the slums in Mumbai. It depicts the story of people who you would really want to help, but at the same time reminds you that these situations are just so complicated and there isn't a one-step donate money answer to aiding people in these types of situations. And I think that's always something good to remind prime ministers and our government about. The next question is, what books do you plan to read next? Aside from Wuthering Heights and Feast for Crows, I would like to read Emma by Jane Austen or Dance with Dragons by George R.R. Martin. It all depends on how motivated I am to avoid spoilers in Game of Thrones. I am one of the people who has not watched any of the TV shows. I'm trying to read the books first. Now with the new series coming out, I'm really afraid that something's going to get spoiled for me. Kind of want to power through the rest of the Game of Thrones books. Emma is also high on my list because it's one of two of the Jane Austen books I have left to read. I started to read Mansfield Park once, but I gave up on it, and I want to give it a shot, but this one's higher on my list. So that was my first booktube video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please leave them down in the doobly-doo. Really looking forward to being part of this community. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Bye!